Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nonkululeko Nyembezi. I'm South African, and I currently chair the board of the Standard Bank Group. And it is an absolute joy and pleasure to be here and spend a few minutes with you. For a nice change, for a topic like this, I'm going to tell you a success story. This is a story that will touch on all three pillars of the World Bank's jobs agenda, namely foundational infrastructure, more predictable regulatory environment, and importantly, from where I stand, a dynamic private sector. Now, I know most of you have heard about South Africa, and what you may think is that my country's main exports are movie and music stars, maybe a lot of, lovely wine, a fine glass of Pinotage. But the actual truth is, our exports are rather boring. We mainly export precious, industrial, and energy minerals, as well as manufactured goods. I'll give you a clue that this depends heavily on reliable and cheap electricity, which we've been able to generate for decades, since the 60s. But just recently, our sole public utility deteriorated to a point where, in fact, electricity in South Africa became anything but predictable. When our CEO of South Africa, the largest on the African continent, we could literally just a few of warning of an impact before it. And so you can imagine the implications of running a steel manufacturing company under those conditions, or indeed any company at all. So what happened? Well, the country asked itself two but critical questions. The first one was the following. Could we think of a smarter, more sustainable way to generate electricity? Secondly, we thought that we could, in fact, look at the endowments of the country, sun, wind. So could renewable sources provide an answer? Another aspect of South African economy is the fact that quite a well-developed private sector, as well as deep financial markets. What could they bring to the party? Could they, in fact, help make the electricity sector more robust and efficient without breaking the bank? So the government set about changing the country's regulations, firstly, to introduce a renewable power program called rather awkwardly, what is it called again? The Renewable Energy Independent Power Program, awkward even to remember, let alone to say it, but actually hiding quite elegant idea was that we crowd in the sector to generate renewable sources and sell that back to the grid, something that actually was not lawful at the time, hence the change of legislation. They also changed legislation to allow the government to procure from power producers using auctions that would prioritize the lowest producers, which is quite tricky for a government in our particular part of the world, which I'm going into right now. But it is critical to also put guarantees behind this program so that those very, very long-term purchase agreements had government guarantees sitting behind them to make the investments viable. The result? 13 years later, for this program, we've seen in excess of $13 billion flow into the program from the private sector. We have now over 6 megawatts of green power and counting. There's more to come to 20. And all of this without taking even a cent, given where we are, from National Treasury, which you have to really say is rather remarkable and rather unusual. To cap all of that, South Africa today, in its renewable power program, boasts some of the lowest energy costs in the world at some 3 US cents per kilowatt hour. Well, if some of you are scratching their heads thinking, why is she talking about energy at a jobs function? Well, what you would also know is millions of Africans today struggle to access electricity with anything like the kind of reliability that is required for a business or indeed an entrepreneur, but also that it is not cheap when it is available. In this modern era, without electricity, you cannot really deliver education, no healthcare, no digital tools in order to be an actor and have agency in our times. And therefore, even the entrepreneurs that we want to catalyze and stimulate in order to create jobs can't get going if you don't have what is a basic foundational infrastructure, namely power. But what about jobs themselves? Well, in the energy program alone, we have created over 82,000 job years across just this energy program, and that encompasses construction, operations, maintenance, and this also gave the country the wherewithal to start again to train apprentices in order to provide services to this particular program. Government was also very, very cautious to make sure that it crowds in local ownership and equity into the program, given that it had been open to producers from wherever in the world. South Africa at that point did not have the know-how and skills in the renewable energy space. We had a lot in coal-fired power generation, so this program was open to producers from around the world, but crowded in local ownership. Standing here now, in 2025, it is very clear that electricity has been and will continue to be the underpin to keep our lights on and our economy running and growing. And so when beyond 25, and it's actually next, the numbers indicate that we should expect by 2030 to see 40%, upwards of 40%, in fact, of power in South Africa generated from renewable sources, from something like 90%, 95% 10, 20 years ago. Over 200,000 jobs will have been created in the renewable energy industry alone. But I suppose if I step back and say, what have we really learned, at least at a personal level, what have we learned from this process? And it is that giving the private sector the space to have leadership, to take leadership within a supportive and an enabling environment, both regulatorily and otherwise, really does unlock innovation. It boosts productivity and competitiveness, and ultimately creates a durable foundation for more jobs in the economy. If we get it right, we will be better prepared to seize opportunities that for a long time felt like they were just over the horizon, and it feels today like they've actually arrived on our shores. It might be just a little bit on the nose to say this at a World Bank event, with absolute apologies to Ajay and co, but as the intelligence age takes root, it is very clear that energy will be its true currency. And where will this energy come from, I hear you ask? Welcome to sunny and windy South Africa. Thank you.